Hello and welcome to HighCast. This episode of HighCast is brought to you by Highland FM. Go to Highland FM to find out about volunteering and more. This episode is brought to you by Rad Solutions. Rad Solutions is a boutique youth consultancy. Go to radsolutions.com.au to find out how you can engage youth. Our guest today is Greg Pointing. Greg is a Bundanoon local and does wildlife rescue around the area, and he's joined us today. Thanks for joining us, Greg.
Thanks for having us.
So you do Australian native wildlife.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so what's the difference, or what does that mean?
I retired basically when I turned 40, 5 years ago. Left working in the corporate environment and moved down here to the Highlands. So I'm not really sure I can call myself a local yet. I've only lived here for 5 years.
Hang on, I've only been here for 2 years. So that makes me less of a local then.
I'll still talk to you.
Yeah, okay. Very good.
And a couple of years ago, we started Do Mixed Retreat. So that started in 2016. We'd been involved with wildlife rescue for a little while before that. And basically we got into that because we came across a swamp wallaby that had been hit by a car on the side of the road. It was in the middle of the road, and we had to stop. And I come from a adventurous type background, so I knew that we had to stop and get the animal off the road. So pulling it off the road, it had movement in the pouch. So we had a look in the pouch and found a little baby Joey rock wallaby, and pulled it out, ripped my jacket off, wrapped it up in the jacket, got home. And Googled wildlife rescue organisations and came up with Wildlife Rescue South Coast.
Yeah.
And the current president, who lives out at Robertson, drove out to our place at Bundanoon and picked a little Joey up and took him away. And we sort of said, well, what's going to happen? And he explained what wildlife rescue was. And a couple of days later, we became members of Wildlife Rescue and got stuck into that.
Hang on. I gotta go back a step. So you retired at 40. What did you do before then?
It's a long story.
Do it quickly for us.
So I was in the technology consulting field for many years.
No wonder you can retire at 40.
I worked for Commonwealth Bank, Hewlett Packard.
Wow, okay.
Spent a couple of years working for Boral. Worked for Australian Defence Industries, Talus, Fujitsu, things like that. So young guy grows up, does the thing that everyone thinks that they're supposed to do, gets the job that makes you money, and you live a pretty normal life. And you then one day I literally woke up, rolled over, turned to my wife and said, I can't do this anymore.
Wow.
Like, it's just, we've got all this money, we've got all this stuff, and just not happy. When you sit down and think about sort of what is happy, you're like, I'm not happy. I'm working my ass off. Yeah. I'm making money. I'm buying things. I'm doing things, but I'm not happy.
Wow. Okay, cool. So did you, so this is way before you found a swamp wallaby. Is it a swamp wallaby?
This is about, it was a swamp wallaby. This is about 6 years ago.
Yeah.
At the time we were living in Concord. So Sydney's inner west.
Yeah. I'm from Epping myself.
Yeah. So both my wife and I grew up in Sutherland Shire. So she's a Sylvania Waters princess, and I grew up in Miranda. And when we met, she lived in Cronulla. And so we both come from a beach sort of, adventure-y type background in that respect. And we ended up moving into Concord, or we actually lived at another suburb first. We moved at Concord. We lived there for a year because I was working a lot in the city, and I was working a lot at Norwest. A lot of the companies are moving out to Norwest now. So
Norwest, yep.
driving from sort of Gymea Bay up to Norwest every day. I was spending 4.5 hours just driving to get to and from work.
And then 8-hour plus days.
And then 8 hours, 12-hour days, and then, come home and spend another couple of hours prepping for tomorrow's work and things like that.
And if you did have a conversation, was in front of the TV and
we still don't watch telly.
Yeah, well, okay. So you didn't go. You didn't
there's
go
nothing
full,
on telly worth watching. So.
You didn't go full meaningless, but you're on your way.
Yeah, but at one point there, we lived in a 3-story house that hung off the edge of a cliff on Gymea Bay.
Yeah, okay.
We had the boathouse, we had the wharf out the front and things like that, and it was fantastic to tell people about.
Yeah,
but I was never there, and the missus was never there. And I'm divorced. I've got an ex-wife with kids, and the only time we really spent in the house was the weekends that we had the kids. So the rest of the time we both just worked, and literally woke up one morning in Concord when we were living in Concord and said, I can't do this anymore. Like, we'd get out of the city on weekends with the kids, and we'd get up on Saturday morning and we'd spend 2 hours getting out of Concord. So we could then drive up to Lithgow to do a bit of forward driving or drive down the south coast, and then you'd come home on a Sunday night and you were exhausted, and then you had 12 days of hectic work again before you did it all over again, and it's not enjoyable.
So this is actually why I do the podcast, right? So I'm fascinated by what people do, whether it's wildlife rescue. We've had journalists and personal trainers, but it's the stories and the reasons why people
down here.
People do things, and my wife and I are in a very not entirely similar circumstances, but we lived on the north shore of Sydney. The northwest of Sydney, and it would take us an hour to take the kids swimming on a Saturday. And that's just crazy.
It's crazy, and we found that we were spending either all of our time at work, or getting ready for work, or traveling to and from work. And it was like, what's the point? And you'd end up in town, and you'd be like, I didn't bring a jacket today, so you just go and buy yourself another jacket. Because you could,
that's awesome.
And we're sitting there and we're going through our wardrobe at the moment there, and Juz picked up a garbage bag yesterday that was sitting in the bottom of the wardrobe and went, what's in here? And I went, oh, that's my suits.
Wow.
And it was like, this bag cost us more than my car.
Yeah, okay.
It was just crazy.
$20,000 worth of suits in your...
not quite that much, but there's probably $10,000 worth of suits in there, suits and shirts.
That's crazy, isn't it?
And you get so wrapped up in what you think is happiness and lifestyle. And we were chuckling the other day that I found all these little mesh bags, and I'm like, what are these? And I went, I remember what these are. These are the bags that I used to individually wash my shirts in.
No.
Because I had nice French cuffed shirts, and if you wash your shirts all together with French cuffs, they all get tangled in each other and you can fold and damage the cuffs. So I used to put my shirts in a little mesh bag.
I've been doing it wrong for the last 10 years.
No,
gosh.
I was doing it wrong. None of this stuff matters. And I came to that realization and said to my wife, Justine, that it's not what we wanted out of life. So we started looking around for where we were going to move to, and we were driving down and looking at places sort of in the Highlands, and we ended up in Bundanoon.
Yep.
And back then I was a big coffee head, so loved my coffee, and pulled into Ye Olde Bike Shop Cafe there in Bundanoon. Yeah. And got those lovely leather couches out the front, and we sat there in the leather couches and had a coffee, and I went, I like the way this town feels. And then 3 months later we were renting a property in Bundanoon, and 12 months after that we actually bought the property that we were renting.
Wow.
I wasn't going to pack up and move again. I was sick of moving.
Wow, what a great story. So you've left it all behind, and then one day you're driving down the road, you come across a swamp wallaby that's unfortunately had an encounter with a car or a vehicle, and you help the Joey out, and then you're volunteering for wildlife rescue. What happened after that? So that's 5 years ago.
That was I think it was about 4 years ago, 4.5 years
Yeah.
ago. We found the swamp wallaby. When we first moved down here, as I said, I retired, and I say that with a bit of sarcasm because you never really retire. You always have to find something to do with your life.
I don't know. I was hoping to retire, but one day let me retire.
But so we started a business, My Weekend Adventures.
Wow, okay.
We had 2 Jeep Wranglers, 2 built-up Jeep Wranglers, and we were doing tours around the Highlands. We were EcoPass licensed tour operators here in the area, so we were in Moreton and Bundanoon National Park and the other parks with what they call themselves? National parks.
Yeah.
So we were doing tours and things like that, which was great, but it was a lot of time, and it brought in some money. It was okay, but it didn't bring in a lot of time. We had a lot of issues with our phones and Telstra, and it just became a big mess.
Yep.
We also started, because I'm a mad mountain biker, well, not quite as mad these days, but I used to be quite mad about it. So we started Bundanoon Bike Shop. And that was a very funny story about how that happened. So
Well, go on, tell it.
I've always looked after and maintained my own bikes, so I've got all the tools to do it. Living there in Bundanoon, mountain biking, I actually volunteered for a while with Highlands Trails and was building all the trails down in Wingello State Forest and maintaining the trails down there once a month, a full day and things. And then a mate of mine came down, or a couple of mates came down. They were staying in the local, it used to be the YHA, which is gone in Bundanoon now. So they were staying in the YHA.
Well, is it a YMCA there now? It's not.
No, it's called High.
Oh yeah, whatever. The backpackers. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's not a backpackers anymore. It's a bit more upmarket now.
Okay,
so, that ended middle of last year.
There you go. I've got to get out to Bundanoon again. Sorry, Bundanoon locals.
So my a mate of mine was staying, or a couple of mates had come down to go mountain biking, and they hadn't told me they were coming down, and they'd been out riding on the Saturday, and they broke one of the guys broke his bike. So they went back, they couldn't fix it, and then they went home. And then during the week, I was having a chat to them, and they're like, "Oh, we were down your way on the weekend, and I broke my bike and I couldn't ride on Sunday." And I'm like, "Well, I've got all my gear here. You should have let me know. You could have come around. We could have fixed it." That. And then talking about it, we went, "Well, where do the locals take their bikes to get their bikes repaired?"
I don't know, where do they?
Well, they bring them up here to Bowral when there was a cycling shop in Bowral.
Yeah, there's still one across the road.
Yeah, that's the new guys that have just started up. There was the other one that was just down the road from here.
Okay.
Who I can't remember who that one was. There's Cyclisti in Mossvale, but they're booked out 2-3 weeks ahead.
Really?
Yep.
Lucky I don't service my bike.
So there was this opportunity there, and so we started doing mobile bike servicing. So you'd literally ring up and book it in.
As an entrepreneur as well. I missed that.
You'd ring up, you'd book in. I'd come out. I'd either service your bike on site if it was a simple, quick service, or I'd pick your bike up and take it back to the garage, and we'd service it, and then we'd drop it back at a time as convenient. So we did bike pickups at 9 o'clock on a Friday night from Bundanoon Hotel, because a guy had got his bike out of his car to go riding on the Saturday and found that he'd bent a derailleur or damaged his bike in some way, and we go and pick it up at 9:30 at night, fix the bike, drop it back 8 o'clock the next morning while they're having breakfast, and they get a good day's ride in.
So you didn't actually have a physical store?
No.
Okay.
And that was part of the reason we ended up closing. I just couldn't get accounts with Shimano and SRAM and those big guys because they wanted me to place bulk orders, and they wanted me to have a storefront, and I had to have a minimum of like $20,000 worth of bikes on display and all this sort of stuff. And
seems a bit silly.
But
it's probably their operating. That's
the model they choose to run, so that's fine. I don't have an issue with that. But it's really hard for me to compete when you come to me and go, "Hey, I'd like to upgrade my Shimano gear set," and I go, "Well, you're better off jumping online and buying it from like Wiggle." Because their price is cheaper than I can get it, because I've got to pay full retail, and if I pay full retail, I have to put markup so I can cover warranty and all this sort of stuff. And $1,000 gear set that you get off Wiggle, I'd have to charge you like $1,500 plus install for. So go and buy it from Wiggle, and then bring it to me, and I'm happy to install it. So that's what we were doing, and we had tubes and tyres and that sort of stuff hanging around. But again, our phone got disconnected, and we didn't have a phone for nearly 18 months. And we have no mobile service where we live. Yeah,
that's a common Bundanoon story.
Yeah,
no mobile
sometimes
service.
It's good, sometimes it's bad. But at that stage, we were really starting to ramp up. We defined what Dimmick's Retreat was, and I was pretty much doing that full time.
So what is Dimmick's Retreat?
So, Dimmock's Retreat is an animal rehabilitation, release, education. So we look at, I guess our motto really is conservation, preservation, and rehabilitation and education. So
Cool.
for us, it's around, at the moment we're focused on just the Australian wildlife. So we do our rescues. We're part of Wildlife Rescue, so all of our rescues are done through Wildlife Rescue.
Okay. So are you employed by Wildlife Rescue?
I'm not employed by anyone.
Okay, so you're a volunteer.
So
Okay.
Wildlife Rescue is 100% volunteers. So there's no paid employees.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
So unlike some of the other organisations, we have no paid employees. So I'm actually on the committee. I'm also the education coordinator. I do I'm one of the two people that does all of their technology, so on the back end. My wife is the local wombat coordinator here for the Southern Highlands and Kangaroo
awesome.
Valley.
You got to put that on a CV, like
so,
wombat coordinator.
So we've got very heavily involved in that, and we realised early on that it was going to cost us a lot of money. Wildlife Rescue is not funded by the government. We're not funded by the government. So Wildlife Rescue survives as an entity. It survives purely on donations, sponsorship. We sell a calendar every year. So we get sponsors to pay for the cost of making the calendar, and then people buy the calendars for $10. That $10 goes directly back into running the organisation and supporting the carers. So if you've got more than 10 animals, they'll help subsidise your milk and things like that. So we've got anywhere between 20 and 30 animals at any one time.
Wow.
We spend, depending on what stage the animals are in and how much they're drinking, obviously as they get bigger, they drink more. We can see bills on a monthly basis of between $300 and $500 purely in milk powder. And it's not like we go and buy a single milk powder.
No.
There's possum powder and wombat powder and kangaroo powder. And when you're looking at kangaroos, there's 2 different types of powder depending on how old they are. And then with there's wombats, at one point we had 3 different types of wombat milk because we've got 3 different stages of the wombat growth.
I didn't know that there would be some gentleman or lady somewhere who's producing wombat powder. And it's not just like wombat powder, it's dependent on species.
Yeah. Yeah.
How does one? Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
How does one get into that? But anyway, it's another.
Yeah.
That's
So
a podcast for another day.
There's 2 milk producers that we use. One is Biolac, and they're just north up here, like just the south side of Sydney there. Yeah. And that's Biolac, and the other one is Wombaroo, which is based in South Australia.
Wow.
So, and they're right into it. Like they've all got that microbiologists or something like that. I know guys that actually study the milk of a kangaroo down to the molecular level, because
just so they can sell it. So there's a market.
Well,
in kangaroo milk powder.
There is. I mean, you look at all the zoos.
I love humans.
Things
We're
like
awesome.
that, you know. But it's very expensive. I mean, last year alone, I'm just trying to do my taxes for last year for the for the company. Last year alone, we spent close to $24,000 in fencing, cages, medicines, things like syringes and needles and all that sort of stuff that we keep on hand, as well as vet bills. I mean, the vets are great for us.
Yeah.
A lot of the vets that we work with give us their labour for free.
Wow, okay.
And give us all of the medicines, the x-rays and stuff at a very heavy discount, at literally for cost price to those guys. So, you think about what they've got invested in becoming a vet. You've got one of our vets who's out from America. She's got $300,000 in student loans that she's trying to pay off.
Oh my gosh!
And she's sitting there on a Saturday doing free work on a wombat after the surgery is closed for us for 3 hours.
So this is definitely for love, not for money.
Definitely.
So there's two ways that when I was thinking about this conversation, there's 2 things that sort of came to mind, like 2 ways the conversation could go. It's the love not money side, but then there's also the why are we in this situation side that Australian native wildlife needs
the support of us. And one of the things that frustrated me 3 years ago when we were first setting up, so we already had our consulting business and we've basically morphed that into Dimmock's Retreat now. So we are a registered proprietary limited for-profit company.
Wow. Okay.
At the moment, it's running at a multi-$1,000 annual loss,
Okay.
which effectively is subsidised by my wife, who works full-time.
Yeah. Okay.
So she gets paid, she gets taxed, that money gets handed into the company and pays for all this stuff. We hope eventually that we will get that back, but at the end of the day, it's a wash.
Yeah. Okay.
We looked at becoming a not-for-profit. So here's an interesting tidbit that really absolutely infuriated me.
Okay.
If I can become a not-for-profit, but I cannot become a charity.
Go on.
If I want to look after Australian native wildlife, which is what I do, I take in injured or orphaned animals, I rehabilitate them to the point where they can be released back out into the wild. So we do everything from tiny little joeys that we call pinkies. So a wombat joey that's got no hair, right? It's a pinky.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll
Makes complete sense.
We'll take in the pinkies and we'll raise them, and then we'll release them as a full, let's call them a juvenile adult, able to survive in the wild and function as a wombat. That process takes about 2 years.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
That is a long
All
time.
right, so we'll have kangaroos and we'll have wombats in for about 2 years. We also take in fully grown mature adults that are very badly injured.
Okay.
So we took in one last year, and he's called Lazarus because he rose from the dead.
I was going to say either that or his hair, but that's Samson.
He actually passed on the operating table in the vet surgery.
Wow.
So he'd been really badly attacked by a dog, and he had quite deep wounds and maggots, and it was really gross. And we, the property owner had actually managed to, the wombat had literally decided he wanted to leave this world.
Yeah.
And the property owner had managed to get him into a containment box, and we went and picked him up, took him straight to the vets, and the vet was there trying to clean the wounds up and trying to work out what was going on, and he died on the table there in front of us. There was no heart rate, there was no breathing, he was gone. So we're there going, okay, well, we'll just roll him back over and we'll have a look and see if there's any other injuries, like does he have a worm burden, like what else is going on that's got him to this state. And while he was sitting there, there was this breathing noise, but like a really rattly, horrible breathing noise. And the vet's like, yeah, that's just a reflex. It'll stop. And it didn't stop. It kept going. But there was still no heart rate. And then so the vet's going, I'm just going to keep checking this. So we're sitting there with the stethoscope on, and the heart started to beat again.
The miracle of Bundanoon.
It was just crazy. So we had to get called Lazarus because he rose from the dead.
You got to write a story, maybe a children's story, maybe not a children's story. I don't know if they could handle the death.
Yeah,
part.
and now this wombat, we then kept him in a box trailer with a cage on it because you can't contain an adult wombat because they will literally beat themselves to death against the wall. So they suffer from myopathy, same as kangaroos. You can't really keep them because they're used to being wild, and if you try and cage them,
really,
they literally kill themselves trying to escape. So we ended up driving this guy all the way down to Falls Creek, which is just south of Nowra.
Yep.
And there's a specialist carer down there who's got some really large pens, and he went down there for a couple of weeks while he was rehabilitated. So daily dressings, daily stuff being applied to his back,
significant
some
effort,
supplementary feeding to get his weight back up till he was at a point where he would survive in the wild. Then he is partially sedated for transport, and again we drove down to Falls Creek, picked him up, drove him back up here, took him back to where he was because they are very territorial, and released him back into his territory.
My gosh, it's a significant effort.
You know, and this was, I kid you not, and there's a photograph of me holding him, trying to smile as I'm holding up 42 kilos of wombat.
Yeah, okay.
Under the armpits like a toddler.
Wow. What do your kids think about this? They think you're crazy?
Yeah, everyone thinks I'm crazy. The first question I get asked, and it's the first question you ask me, really was, do you get paid for this?
Well, I kind of got there in the end, but
yeah, but and people are. I mean, I've always been involved heavily in volunteering. I was a scout leader and stuff like that. I did Coast Guard, volunteer Coast Guard for a couple of years, rescue boat crews and radio rooms and things like that. And they come down here, and there's obviously no Coast Guard in Bundanoon because there's no coast.
Well, not until a tsunami happens. And
Well, that's true.
And then we've all got ocean views.
Well, we live sort of on the edge of the escarpment into Bundanoon Creek, and we talk about it jokingly and say, well, we can't wait for global warming to come through and race it, because then we'll have waterfront property.
Well, yeah, let's not joke about it. It might happen one day.
Yeah.
That's a conversation for another day, probably.
So, we got so heavily into doing all these animals, and everything else sort of washed aside. We closed My Weekend Adventures. We closed down the bike shop. And I just focus on this full time now. We started the Dimmicks Retreat company. It's kind of the wrapper that we use to hold, rather than buying $25,000 worth of stuff, me personally, and it's my personal asset. We wrapped it up in the company.
It's
there.
Easier to run at a loss, that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Well, not so much running at a loss, because it ultimately it does have to become, let's say, profitable. It has to break even, and we've got no intention of making a profit out of the wildlife. We'd like to cover our costs and have money to invest back in. And one of the big things is, and it's one of the reasons I've taken on the role of education coordinator for wildlife rescue, is that, you're asking me questions here that to me now, 3 years on, seem pretty simple sort of solutions. But when you go and talk to people out there, no one knows.
Yeah, okay.
We've got the current news is all talking about should we cull or shouldn't we cull kangaroos.
Yes.
Right. So eastern grey kangaroos, they will produce 1 joey per year. They're not like rabbits. They don't pop them out like a shotgun. They produce 1 joey per year. In the wild, 70% of the joeys born will not make it to mature juveniles. 70% of their joeys die in the first 2 years.
Seems quite normal.
Right?
Yeah.
That doesn't include motor vehicle strikes, dog attacks,
So
all
we're
that sort of
talking,
stuff.
what, 15% maybe?
Probably some, but again, there's no studies, there's no statistics that show this. We know from the few studies that have been done that only 30% of kangaroos that are born make it through to adulthood.
Yep.
And, so I don't understand when people say, well, they're in plague proportion because they're breeding like crazy.
Maybe out west.
They can't breed like crazy. What's happening is we're cutting up big farms into small farms. We're putting more housing in. We're creating like the little hobby farms, putting in lots of fences, destroying where they're currently living.
Oh, okay. So
we're
more
pushing them.
in the,
We're pushing them down, and because we've got climate change that's happening, the hots are getting hotter, the colds are getting hotter, the water's moving, the rain's moving around as to where it's falling. So the kangaroos are trying to move to where they can survive. So that means that if they have to come down out of the bushed areas to get onto the grassy plains so that they can eat, well, that's what they do.
And that's what you would do too, right?
That's exactly right.
If you were hungry and you saw some food, you're going to go eat it.
All of a sudden, people are going, well, we've seen a doubling of kangaroos. So
it's not actually the number of kangaroos that are doubled. It's just that there's more kangaroos in a place where they previously may not have been.
That many kangaroos.
And people, their observations, jumping to conclusion is not the right word, but it's along those lines.
That's right.
Because you're seeing more, it's like, well, there must be more Okay, cool.
Yeah, and it's, again, we don't have a lot of statistics. There's not a lot of done on it. All the studies that are being done by people who have, and let's be honest, a commercial vested interest. So the people who are studying kangaroos are the people that want to cull the kangaroos. And they've got all these studies that show we've counted them and there's twice as many as there were last year. Okay, that's a fact. You can't dispute that fact because last year you counted 1,000 kangaroos in this area, and this year there's 2,000 kangaroos.
You can dispute the validity of their study.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And when you look at the studies that are being produced, like every other study, you need to look at what's the driver behind the study and what are these statistics trying to show, and do they adequately show that?
Yeah. Okay. So what's happening in the Highlands? Like you've obviously got enough business going on.
More than enough.
Yeah. So
yeah.
So you've been here 5 years. I've only been here 2 years. Sorry, excuse me. I haven't been here 10 years for those locals who are real locals. Is the population increasing at a rate? Is the volume of traffic increasing at a rate that just is beyond the ability of animals to cope? Are we clearing more land?
Yeah. If we look at Bundanoon specifically,
yeah, you've got some developments going on out there.
There's a lot of developments going on
there.
It's
a real shame, but
we're seeing a personality change occurring in Bundanoon, and we've only been here for 5 years. So the people that have been there a lot longer than us are definitely seeing a different change. And I'm sure that I was part of the change when I first moved in.
Yeah.
And it's going to happen. But there's the back road into Bundanoon that brings you in through Elsmore Road. So a couple of years ago, that was a crappy dirt road. It was rutted. It had rocks on it. No one drove on it. Hardly ever got a call out for an animal strike on that road. The council's done a great job. It's a lovely bitumen. It's flat. It's really nice road. We saw a massive increase in the number of animal strikes. We had 3 wombat strikes in 2 nights on that road.
Okay.
Purely because the traffic loading on that road is now much higher.
Yeah, okay.
So, it means there's less people using the other road into Bundanoon because it's people that live out the back are going in that way. But, and that's what we're seeing around the whole Shire effectively is places where there are more cars travelling down the roads, we're getting more animal strikes. So that makes more sense. If you've got more cars there, there's a higher chance that animals are going to get hit. And unfortunately, animals don't... You can't learn that cars are bad if you die from it. Because then you can't tell anyone
I'm
that
smiling
cars are bad.
because it's kind of funny, but it's not.
It's So, and I've had people say to me, they should just learn. Well, it's not like they have wombat school, and it's not like they have a meeting every month where cranky old wombat sits up and goes, "Oh, I had this thing and it was like a car, and oh, it clipped me and it rolled me down the road, and oh, I'm so lucky to be alive," because that doesn't happen.
Yeah,
like, wombats are solitary animals, and
they're just animals.
But the only time that they're just animals. That term.
I don't mean that.
I know, but I mean, I get that told all the time. Oh, they're just animals,
No, I don't mean it from a
derogatory perspective.
It's animals that don't have the same level of sentience that we have, nor the ability to, I don't know, like you're saying, having wombat school to learn vicariously, etc.
Yeah. But I mean, they do interact with each other, and they do have complex social structures that we're only just beginning to understand now. Yeah. So, I was always told wombats are solitary animals. Well, they kind of are.
Well, they've got a mate, so they're not solitary all the time.
Well, there will be an alpha male that services a whole area. Huh. He will have several females in his area. He will tolerate juvenile males in his area, but he won't tolerate other adult males in his area because they become a threat. Wombats timeshare burrows. No. Seriously.
Wow, that's really cool.
They will obviously have their preferred burrows that they like, but they will timeshare their burrows. So if you've got a dominant wombat in a burrow and a subdominant wombat attempts to enter, they'll be growling and carry on, and someone will wander off and go and find another burrow. If the dominant one wants to use the burrow that a subdominant one is, they'll be growling and carry on, and someone will move out and the dominant one will move in. So, and they do interact with each other. I mean, we've got this morning, just before I came here, I did the water run out where we fill up all the waters, and currently have 3, let's call them sub 10 kilo wombats out in the outside enclosure, and they've all got personalities. They are absolutely crazy, and we've got one wombat that's climbing up and trying to bite my knee. I've got the other wombat that's trying to steal my shoe. And I've got the other wombat that's lining me up to run and jump and headbutt me in the back of the leg because he knows if he hits me just in the right spot in the back of the knee, I'll fall over. And then they can climb all over me.
Who would have thought that wombats were so complex? Sorry, you go on.
People don't see this side of them. All they see is this large dark object on the side of the road, or the sleepy wombat in the zoo that is not really doing anything.
Yeah, I think wombats are really cool. It's a pity that we don't have a better relationship. Because you see quite a lot of kangaroos, for example. Yeah, and they're iconic. But wombats, like you say, probably not necessarily unknown, but not known well enough for how cool they are.
Yeah, and we don't have any real studies or I guess data that we can actually look at.
So I make you mayor of the Wingecarribee.
It's bigger than Wingecarribee, but I do like the idea of being mayor of Wingecarribee.
Okay, but, I make you mayor of Wingecarribee. What do we need to do from a whole of Shire perspective to let's just start with protect wildlife, and then we'll go from there.
So it really is about educating people. So when you're out at night and you're driving,
expect wombats.
Expect not just wombats. Expect kangaroos. Expect possums.
Yeah, plenty of
I unfortunately drive a fair bit at night. I would obviously prefer not to, but I manage my speed, and I'm sure I infuriate people who come across me when I'm driving at 70 in an 80 zone and 80 in a 90 zone and things like that.
But what hurry are you in? You got to do brain surgery? Come on.
Well, that's it. And we sold our Jeeps a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, to use that money to pay for some fencing that we needed, and we bought, let's call them more appropriate cars. So we upgraded from the Jeep to a Nissan Patrol.
Yeah.
And I downgraded from a Jeep into a little 1.6 litre 2-door Mazda. So
whatever does the job, right?
Purely from a selfish perspective, I know that if I hit an animal in my Mazda, I'm going to write my car off.
Yeah, okay.
And we see that all the time where people say, I was driving home from work and it was like, dusk, and I hit this wombat and I destroyed my car. It's like, well, yeah, unfortunately that does happen. But what if it was a little girl that ran on the road? What if it was someone's dog or things like that? For some reason, we view our wildlife, our native animals, differently to our domestic animals and to everything else on the road.
Really? I wouldn't have that. So why do you think that people do?
Someone hits a dog on the side of the road. Someone hits a dog. Most of the time, most people, reasonable people, will stop and go back and see if the dog's okay, because we have an emotional reaction around a domestic animal, like it's a dog or it's a cat or something,
maybe a horse.
Or a horse. Yeah. Well, if you hit a horse, you're going to stop anyway.
Shouldn't laugh about these things, but it is kind of funny.
You hit a kangaroo, and I've been behind people coming home that have hit a kangaroo, and I've seen the kangaroo spin off the front of their car, and they're a four-wheel drive, and they've got a bar on the front of their car. That's why you have a bar, because accidents happen, right?
Yeah.
But they haven't stopped.
That's really
they've just kept going, and I'm like, how can you do that?
See, I'm wondering whether, and you probably thought about this, but if someone hits a dog or a domestic animal, there's an understanding that there is a human relationship there. Yeah. But perhaps when you hit an animal, a native animal, there's no human consequence.
Yes.
So perhaps it is, I'm going to work, and if I hit a dog, I'm going to stop, and I can be late for work because
I hit a dog.
Yeah.
Yeah. People will understand that.
Yeah. But if I hit a kangaroo and it's just gone off, well, what's my boss going to say? So I know doesn't make it any better.
No, but it's
more complex.
Yeah, and part of the challenge that we face is that I would love, and people say to me, we get calls all the time, hey, can you bring some of your wombats into the school and show the kids? I would love to.
Yeah, but
I would love to take a wombat into a school, or take a kangaroo into a school, but we can't. But it's against the law.
But is it?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's funny, because the thing that you said was the most important was education. But and I understand that you were saying with wombats you can't have them enclosed, and they probably just want to be during the day. They probably want to be somewhere underground and cool.
Yep.
So it's probably not right. So how do you educate people?
So this is part of the challenge.
The conundrum.
You can go and see the kangaroos in a zoo. You can go and feed the kangaroos in some of the open air zoos and things like that. Right. But those kangaroos are humanized. They could not survive in the wild.
Huh.
Whereas the ones that we're raising, the ones that we're rehabilitating, the sole purpose of doing what we do is to release them into the wild so that they can do what they need to do. Same with the possums that we raise, same with the wombats that we raise. Same with the echidna that we rehabilitated.
I'm lucky. I live on the barrel side of the Jib, and I've seen a wombat and echidna and wallabies up there. So I'm very lucky to have that wildlife on my doorstep, essentially.
Yeah.
In what is just it's a suburban area, really.
Yeah.
And I consciously drive over that hill really slow, especially on dawn and dusk, because I'm aware that the wildlife is there. But people who don't traverse that at night they wouldn't know.
Yep.
So is there room within the Shire just for really basic understanding? Is that you might live in Barrel or Mittagong or Mossvale, and essentially you just live in a suburban lifestyle. It just happens that you're an hour and a half away from Sydney.
Yep.
But 5 minutes down the road or within your suburban fringes is actually, rural Australia, really.
Yeah,
unless you
very
live,
much so.
even if you're on the Mittagong side, you've got rural Australia.
Drive for 10 minutes and you're in the country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is the basic education about, hey guys, you might live in a suburb, like let's say Renwick is going to be a brand spanking new suburb, and you wouldn't differentiate that from, I don't know, Kellyville on the northern side of Sydney.
Yeah.
But hey, you're moving into Renwick, but it's not really like the suburbs that you used to, perhaps. I mean,
the council's got some great initiatives coming up.
Yeah, okay.
So we've been talking to and working with
fantastic.
Joe Stammers and
I don't
those guys.
know.
And I've been talking to Noel, who's the business development manager with the council and things like that. And we were looking at doing things like the rail trail and stuff like that to help get people out and do things.
Oh, is that the one?
Tarmore down to Mittagong.
Yeah. So I was like, why are you spending money on that? Just fix the roads.
Yeah. That's the same dilemma I get. So
sorry.
My wife and I are part of, so there's a recreational group called Track Trails and Streams.
Yeah, it seems like a really cool idea, but I'm like, come on, can you just fix the roads first?
Yeah.
But I shouldn't say that. Like it's...
Yeah, we get the same dilemma. We don't have gutters in our street, and for the first year that we moved in, we got flooded. Half our house got destroyed. Our workshop got destroyed. One of my cars got written off.
Yeah.
That's because the stormwater drainage was not working the way it was supposed to, and things like that.
Well, there is no stormwater. I'm lucky enough to have been involved in some of the stormwater stuff, and it's basically over the 150 years that the Shire has evolved.
Yeah.
Well, they just didn't.
We haven't evolved it. Yeah.
Yeah, it just wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
And times have caught up, and that's why we've got our 43% extra levy.
Yeah.
It's like, hey guys, we're kind of operating in 1952 here. What's going on?
That's not just Widgecarry Shire Council.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure it's a common.
It's everywhere. But I mean, I grew up in the Sutherland Shire, and I remember as a kid that our street used to flood every time there was a big rainstorm, and we would go and, quite stupidly at the time, we'd go and ride a boogie boards down the street and things like that. So
I know I was being facetious and saying you're mayor, but what we're talking about, whether it's stormwater or planning for new developments, should Wingecarribee Council be looking at 30 years' time and saying, well, we've got this incredible natural habitat surrounding us, particularly down in Bundanoon.
Yeah.
What do we do to ensure that both the flora and the fauna flourishes?
We need to make sure that the planning controls are in there. And we've got a bulldoze Bundanoon at the moment.
Yeah, I actually wouldn't mind talking to someone from there. Actually,
they're coming in and literally bulldozing blocks out to put 700 square metre blocks in there that have got no trees. Now,
you should have a rule that you can't have houses in the Wingecarribee that are smaller than 1,000 square metres.
Yeah.
Like just something stupid like that would make a big difference, I reckon.
The reason that the old trees are so important is people look at it and go, oh, well, it's a dead tree. Well, it's full of hollows. Australian wood ducks go in hollows, possums go in hollows, cockatoos, a lot of our birds go in hollows.
You never see a duck in a tree.
You see a wood duck in a tree. But if you cut down all the trees around your house, particularly the old trees that have the hollows and have the drays in for the possums, the possums are going to go into your house because they've got nowhere else to go. So then people complain that they've got possums in their house, right? So
I wonder whether it's realistic, and maybe I'm a bit naive in this respect. They go out, and Renwick's a really great example. They go out and they just clear 10 hectares.
Yeah.
Like, is it unrealistic that you can invite developers in and say, hey guys, you can develop this area, but these are the prerequisites that of the 10 hectares, 30% remains wooded. I'm just making it up now.
Yep.
That natural waterways can't be excavated and then replaced
piped and filled in. And
or I understand you need sewerage and all those sort of things, but can that be done, or is it just there's no profit in that? And I know I shouldn't be asking.
I think at the end of the day, it comes down to unfortunately what society is demanding, and we appear to be demanding,
cheap
you know,
mansions.
600 square foot houses on a 700 square foot block.
Yeah,
you know, and I personally don't understand
that's
that.
disgusting. That's why it's one of the reasons I moved down here
to get away from all that. Yeah. So I mean, you know, what really is important is that we maintain the places for the animals to live. Otherwise, they will end up in your house. You know,
but can't we say? And sorry to interrupt, but can't we say, like, as locals, that or ratepayers, that's the direction we want council to take, and say, look, develop it. We want more people to come to the Wingecarribee or to the Southern Highlands, on the conditions that
this is how they live.
It doesn't turn out like Campbelltown.
Yeah. Yep. And I believe there's a lot of people doing that. The council has a 2030 strategy plan.
Yeah, community strategic plan. Is that the same one? Yeah.
Yep. I think you can read that. And they talk a lot about, and I was involved last year in the review of that, the community review of that.
I've read it. Yep. I spent a lot of time on my radio show with Highland FM 107.1.
Got to get that.
Well, look,
plug in there.
We're in the studios of Highland FM. I wouldn't be able to do this without Highland FM, a community radio station. And I read the community strategic plan, and we would talk about it on my show. And the thing about the plan is it's really ambitious, and it's really detailed and really thorough. And I just think, well, you then read the council, the minutes of council, and it's like, well, they're not even referring to it. They're not even talking to it. Like it's like council has gone off and done this fantastic thing, and then it's been ignored. Yeah.
And that's, I mean, I come from a corporate strategy background.
Yeah.
And I used to see that so much in the corporate environment. So I'm not surprised to see it happening in the government as well. What I think needs to be done to address that is, and this is one of the things that I used to bring in when I used to do my consulting practice work, was if you put a strategic plan together, you then need to communicate that out to everyone.
So back to your education point,
every time somebody wants to do a project, you know, so the council's putting together a project at the moment about green pathways.
Yep.
You know, ways for the animals to move around the Shire without having to go through people's houses and stuff like that. And that really is important. And it's something I'm quite interested and passionate about. So I'm doing a diploma in conservation and land management. So I'm totally changed my career path from
it's over good on you. I love these stories. They're my favourite ones.
And you know, that's something that the council's working on, which is great. And if you look at that project, and then when you propose is we would like money from council, ultimately from, I guess, state government to do these things, is we look at it and we go, here is our project. And then we draw the lines across the requirements that go, this ties into this strategic plan, and this ties into that, and this will address that. And I think every project that gets put up needs to clearly show where it defines off against the defined strategic plan for the council.
So how does those developments out of Bundanoon meet those requirements? That's the question, that what's in the community strategic plan doesn't match what you see.
And this is where it gets a bit crazy.
Yeah.
So, and I can't remember the exact amounts, but if your overall development exceeds a certain amount of money,
here we go.
It gets kicked up from the local approval. So if the council goes, look, I don't like your idea, it doesn't meet our plan, you kick it straight up to the state government.
And the state government
just goes, here you go. You're going to destroy koala habitat. It's okay. We've created a sanctuary just out of Mittagong, so you can destroy their habitat down there. It's all good. And I can understand the council getting very frustrated when they've done all this work to produce this lovely strategy document that is quite detailed. It's ratified by the community. This is what we want. And then the developer can go, well, I'm going to buy a massive block of land and I'm going to spend $10 million developing it. Therefore, the council doesn't get a say in it. And, you know, the council's now doing massive upgrades, new water mains into Bundanoon because we're out of water capacity. If you live in the high areas of Bundanoon, you get no water.
Why would you live in Bundanoon? Sorry.
Because we're right on the edge of Moreton National Park.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic place to live, and I think you're very lucky not only to live where you live, and but to do what you do, and to have, there's not many people who are fortunate enough, first of all, to be in a position to do what you've done.
Yeah.
But then to actually pursue something that you're obviously very, very passionate about. There's not many people that I have a conversation with that you really tell that they love what they do. Like you're a very lucky person to have that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm the only reason I'm able to do what I do is because of the support from my wife. So she still works full time.
I hope you're listening.
Yeah, she effectively financially supports what we're doing at the moment.
Yeah.
So we get a little bit of money coming in for donations. So, and here's my term for my plug.
Yeah,
so
no, of course. That's
you
part
can
of the reason for the
we're
show.
on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we've got a webpage.
Yep.
So it's www.dimmicksretreat.com.au.
Yep.
We're on Facebook, Dimmicks Retreat, or Instagram, we're actually Dimmicks Retreat Wildlife.
Yep.
So, like us, Instagram, follow us. I don't know, I'm not an Instagrammy person, but follow us on that, and you can see what we do on a day-to-day basis. There's also Wildlife Rescue, who we are very heavily involved with, which is wildlife-rescue.org.au. And on both of those sites, there's a donate button.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do people donate?
So
is that the only way, or go up, give you $20 in the street?
If you want to hand me $20 in the street, I'm not going to say no.
Okay, very good.
But yeah, go on there and donate. Have a look and see what we do. My wife, she's the social media manager, we jokingly call her. So she's all over the Facebook and the Instagram.
That's awesome.
And everything. So we post lots of stuff up on there and what we do, and it's part of from our perspective is, and I know I need to do a lot more, but the first couple of months or last couple of months of last year and this year, like we had some wombats in that were on 6 feeds a day.
Yeah.
So that's every 4 hours.
You only do what you can.
And every feed takes an hour.
Yeah.
So I was getting 2-hour cat naps and just to do a feed here and a feed there and stuff like that. And it physically takes a toll on you. And from a carer's perspective, this is something that the state government is actually starting to look at, is burnout of carers.
Yeah, okay.
My wife's on the New South Wales Wildlife Council. Yeah. And this is something that they are concerned about, because as we're seeing...
Yeah, it's with human carers too. It's no difference, right? You're investing a lot of your physical and your mental capacity into...
That's right. And eastern grey kangaroos are so fragile, like unbelievably so. We've had the electricity company helicopters doing the line checking. Oh,
yeah, they've been doing that heaps around here lately, yeah.
Yep. So last time they came through, I think it was last year they came through and they came over and we had what we call it a stress event, right? We had a stress event with our kangaroos. They all got sloppy poo and they're all out of sorts, which means, we have to medicate them and basically nurse them back into health. And we did ask to, and they did confirm that we were registered on there. If they're going to be doing this low flight, that they'll notify us. Yeah. Someone didn't process a piece of paperwork, and they came through last week again, and really low, and it's a lot of noise, and it just set all the kangaroos off. So, if they're in the wild, they just run away from the noise.
Yeah.
But we have them in a 40 by 20 sort of meter cage enclosure, and they can't escape. So, we've got to run over there and be there with them because that helps calm them down. But we also then have to put up with, the obviously the stress of the event for them, where they're off their food and they get sloppy poo. And then once they run down, then they're susceptible to, things like coccidiosis and worms and all this sort of stuff that, we can lose animals out of a simple stress event.
And all that time that you're spending doing that is less time that you're on Instagram or Twitter or whatever it is, doing the education piece that you think is the most important piece. Yeah. So just tell us again how Instagram, Twitter, what was the...
Instagram. So Instagram.
Facebook.
So it's Dimmicks Retreat Wildlife on Instagram.
Yep.
On Facebook, it's Dimmicks Retreat.
Yep.
And then it's our website, which is www.dimmicksretreat.com.au.
And donations on the donate button?
Donations on the donate button on Facebook and the website. And then Wildlife Rescue, who we are heavily involved with as well, which is wildlife-rescue.org.au.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Greg. It was an absolute pleasure to have you on here. I think if you're willing, we'll have you as a return guest.
Oh, definitely.
Because I think there's lots more. We didn't even get onto half the things that I asked Greg what we wanted to talk about, but that's the whole point of a podcast. I know.
Well, I'd like to come back and obviously talk about the wildlife a bit more as well.
Yeah.
But I think one of the future episodes we can plan on doing is talking about just the environment around here and things that people in the Highlands can go and do. I mean, I ran a tour company for 2 years. I know a lot of places that people can get into quite easily and quite safely and out again, all 3-4 hours.
You take
out.
little kids?
Yeah, you can take little kids.
All right, we'll have a conversation offline. This has been the 8th episode of HighCast. We'll get Greg, I don't know, sometime before 50, I reckon, if we ever get to that. The best news about HighCast, it is now available on iTunes. Tell your friends, tell your mum, tell your dog. Don't hit your dog with a car, just tell them.
And if you do, check the pouch.
Yes, please. Subscribe on iTunes so I don't have to bug you on Facebook or whatever. You just get notified straight away. But thank you very much, Greg. It's been fantastic.
Oh, my pleasure.
Cheers.